I've read 40 books so far in 2023, so I thought I would tier rank them from the best. No, we're going from the worst to the best. My name is Elizabeth. I like to read books and talk about them. I also like to film lifestyle content, commentary content, and some vlogs. So if that sounds interesting to you, you can go ahead and hit subscribe and stay tuned for more, because there will be plenty more coming up in the near future. I'm not excited for the end of the year when I have to go through it again and figure out which ones were better that I read in the second half than the first half. But I'm sure the ones that were ranked at the bottom will stay quite at the bottom unless I read worse books between now and January 1st, 2024. Good Lord, who says 2024 yet? Apparently I do. Coming in at the very bottom, number 40. Number 40. It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. This book is just bad. Just bad. Terrible. No good. Do not pick it up. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Throw this book away as soon as you can. Book number 39, Elizabeth the Queen. It was just a very dull biography, and I did read it for a Goodreads challenge, but I do not recommend this biography. There's plenty of other nonfiction you can read that will be much more engaging. Number 38, November 9 by Colleen Hoover. If I had $1 for every time a Colleen Hoover character died in a car wreck, I would have too many dollars. Number 37, Wear It Like a Crown. I'm not saying it could have been good, but it was One Direction fan fiction that I didn't realize until halfway through the story, and I did finish reading it because I started it, but it was One Direction fan fiction. I'm surprised it didn't go into number 40 slot. Colleen Hoover just barely edged out the One Direction fan fiction. Number 36, A Game of Hearts and Heist. This was softcore sapphic porn. I didn't really like it. I did not like it. Number 35, The Blue Stocking. I think this was third in a Regency romantic series, and it just didn't really hit me. I normally can read Regency rom-coms out of order and it would be totally fine, but the characters, I feel like, were characterized in other stories and they just expected me to know them even though they weren't the main characters in other stories, and I didn't really like the romance. Number 34, Love, Hate, or Clickbait. Imagine Red, White, and Royal Blue, but worse. And imagine it like you were running for president of the United States, but the entire book was set in California. This was definitely written by someone on the East or West Coast with no basis understanding of American politics. Number 33, Regretting You. Colleen Hoover strikes again with a bad book. The only reason I have so many Colleen Hoover books on this thing is because I did a Colleen Hoover book challenge and I regretted it just like I regret regretting. Number 32, Ugly Love. Another Colleen Hoover bad book. Honestly, the bottom of the list could have just been completely Colleen Hoover reads, but I did read some other bad books, thankfully. Is that a thankfully? We're balancing it out. Number 31, For Her Consideration. This is a sapphic romance and it could have been good. It just had some major plot holes. For one, the main character abandons her friends for 3 years, and at first you're like, oh, I've not talked to people for 3 years, and then walk back into their life. But it was pretty clear through the story that her friends were extremely close to her, and it didn't make sense for them to let her disappear for 3 years and then walk back in as if nothing had happened. Number 30, Tempting the Bride. Now, I actually have read a bunch of this author's works just because they have been really engaging, and of all the books, this probably ranks at the bottom. I normally like all of her work, and some of it even is in like my top 10 favorite books of the year, but this one just didn't hit the same as her other writing. Number 29, Cursed and Cherished. Imagine a Twitter main character set in Regency England. That is why I did not like this book. 28, The Botanist's Apprentice. It's a novella. It could have been longer. It wasn't bad, and I really do like this author, and I had a lot of fun reading a lot of their books, but it could have been much, much longer, and I would have been much happier if we'd had another like 25-30 pages. I also really don't like the trope of medicinal arousal is the word, I guess, where you suddenly have this medicine that makes you really have to make out. That just doesn't strike me as very well written. Number 27, The Dachshund Wears Prada. This was so cute. This was cute. It was just a sweet little romance set in New York, and I like the Dachshund. I wish the Dachshund had been in the story more than she was. Number 26, The Five. This is a nonfiction This is a nonfiction history book about the 5 women who Jack the Ripper killed. It was interesting. I'm just not really into Jack the Ripper or that time period in England, so it didn't really do anything more than just check off a book that I read for the Goodreads nonfiction challenge that I did. Number 25, The Solstice Cabin. Also a novella. Could have been longer, but I did like it better than The Botanist's Apprentice, and it actually told a really cool story in less than 100 pages, which I was really impressed by. It was a very good, well-written short story, and normally I don't really fall for romances in short stories because they tend to be too short for me to get the full character development, but I thought it did a good job of really developing the romance in a very few set of words. Number 24, Independence. This is a story of three sisters as the British partition India and India gains its independence, and you have the partition of India and Pakistan. It was okay. It had a lot of tropes I don't like with sister stories. I don't like two sisters who fall for the same man. Maybe because I'm gay and I never had a crush on the same guy that my sisters had. So maybe that was the reason why I don't like it when two sisters are in love with the same man. But it was fine. It was a really great historical fiction for being historical fiction. It just didn't really grab me personally. I didn't really care for the conflict between the sisters. Number 22, Going by Coastal. I really do like Dahlia Adler, and I will read every book that they write, hopefully. I just didn't like it was apparently based on this movie called Looking Both Ways, where it's like parallel stories, and picking which one or the other can show like which timeline you could have lived. That's not really my kind of vibe. It's a little far out there, and I don't really believe in alternate universes, so sorry to disappoint, but that is not my favorite kind of story. Number 21, In Deeper Waters. This is a very, very fun, pitched as piracy gay romance. It really didn't have a lot of piracy, but I did like the main character. I thought he was really, really engaging. He's kind of the kind of character I really like that stubborn, tight-lipped young man set up against the world. But he also was the youngest in a royal family, and I like that trope. It had a lot of tropes that I really like. It just wasn't a piracy story, even though the cover and the premise was pitched as a piracy story. Slippery Creatures. Now, I have read almost all of this author's works now that I've discovered them, and I do like KICHARLES. I do like them as an author. So I had to figure out which ones how to rank their books without ranking them all, 1 to 7 or whatever. Slippery Creatures is a mystery, and I don't really like mysteries, so I think the books of KICHARLES that focus on the mystery over the romance tended to rank lower for me just because I'm not a mystery person, but I did like that it was set in the 1920s in London, and I felt like I got a really good vibe from 1920s London in a way that I've never gotten before, so that was fun. Number 19, His at Night. Maybe I should have ranked this lower because I don't remember it, but apparently it's one of those romance books that I read and I liked, and I ranked it number 19. But because I don't remember it, maybe it should have ranked lower. You'll have to forgive me. Thief in the Night. This is also a very fun Regency, was it Regency? It was also a romance. It was also a novella, and I did like that it was a novella because it also felt like a very complete story they're really good at writing novellas, I will just say. The novellas I read lately have been hitting the mark, especially their romance. Number 17, End Papers. End Papers was poetic, it was beautiful. I didn't really connect to the main character in a way that I wanted to. It was set in New York, early 2000s, with a non-binary, gender-fluid kind of main character who's trying to figure out where they fit in the world, what their gender means to them. And I really thought it was great, especially not having the language in the early 2000s that we might have today, and trying to find what it means to be gender-fluid or non-binary and how that might impact your relationships and your place in the world. And I thought it was fantastic. Number 16, The Secret Lives of Country Gentlemen. KICHARLES just writes candy. That's what it is, it's candy. So I really like their writing, and this one did not disappoint. Number 15, Becoming Free Indeed. I ranked this up higher because it created a lot of community talk. My Goodreads review on Becoming Free Indeed has a lot of engagement, so I think I ranked it higher because of that. But if we're talking purely the writing, it would rank like number 50. But because it has created a lot of community conversations. Why can't I think of the word conversations? Anyway, because of the conversations it inspired, I put it up higher because it is something I talk about a lot because I keep seeing people comment on my Goodreads review, and it just creates conversations. So it does rank higher due to that. Not that it is a well-written story book. All right. Number 14, we have a sapphic romance. Astrid Parker Doesn't Fail. This is the second one after Delilah Green Doesn't Care, and I liked it. Now that I'm saying it's ranked number 14, I feel like maybe some other books could have ranked higher, but I'm just gonna leave it at this ranking. Number 13, we have another KICHARLES book, Subtle Blood. This is in their 1920s male mystery novel romance series. It was fine. I think I liked the second book better than the first and third book, and I think that's how I ranked it, I think. can't remember if Subtle Blood is the third one or the second one. Anyway, I thought it was a fun little romp through 1920s England with a bit of a murdery mystery on the side. Number 12, The Gentle Art of Fortune Hunting. I actually really loved this book, and that's why it's ranked number 12. I had a blast reading through this, and just like fingers crossed that the characters would make up and make out, because it was a little too much tension there for me to just sit there and read. Number 11, really good actually. This story is about a person who goes through, this is about a late 20s gal who goes through a divorce and her life falls apart. So it's going really good actually, and really good actually was a really good book. So I've decided when I do this at the end of the year, I'm gonna rank all the series together instead of dividing the series into individual books. That is my new rule going forward. Anyway, so for number 11, we're gonna implement this rule. Number 11, I'm gonna put the Captive Prince series because I just finished reading it. So it's actually like book number 41, 42, and 43 if we're counting the actual numbers of books that I've read this year. And I didn't like Captive Prince number 1. I was kind of meh about it, but Captive Prince's Rising number 2 swept me away. And the end of the third book, I felt a little meh, but I've like reread it several times and I'm learning to love it more and more. So I will probably never reread the first book, but the second and third one I will reread and reread and reread because I really devoured them and they just hit something in my soul. So yeah, Captive Prince is now ranked the series number, but if we had to individually rank it, number 1 would be very close to the bottom because I did not like the first book. All right, number 9 is one of my favorite Arden books, and it is a novel arrangement. It has polyamory and it was so well written that I could not stop thinking about it for a while, and I reread several chapters over and over again because I really liked it. I was obsessed with it. All right, number 8, The Sugared Game. Did I miss number 10? No, number 10 was Captive Prince, and I just numbered 11 twice in here. Okay, so we fixed that. And so y'all know right now, we're in the right number, which is number 8, The Sugared Game, which I think I should have just done series together, and if I redid this, I would have to throw away 15 minutes of footage, and I'm not going to do that. So we're just going to put The Sugared Game, which is in the KJ Charles 1920s mystery series here, and it's the highest ranked because it was my favorite in the series. Number 7, A Lady for a Duke. This book is so good. It's a trans-centered romance in Regency England, which I don't often get, and it just had this tenderness of feeling that really made my heart weep. Number 6, we're switching it up real hard. We got a nonfiction book. We have Caste, The Origins of Our Discontent, or Caste or Caste? Caste, maybe. Anyway, it compares the caste systems of India to the racial segregation of the United States and the Nazi regime in Germany, and shows the similarities, the ways they pulled from each other, and their long-term effect on our world today. Highly, highly recommend. It was one of the best, as it's in my top 10, it is one of the best books I have read so far in 2023. Number 5, I reread the Husband Material and Boyfriend Material, or maybe I just read Husband Material and then I went and reread the first one, Boyfriend Material. Husband Material was so good. I don't remember feeling that way about Boyfriend Material. I remember feeling pretty meh after I read Boyfriend Material, but Husband Material made me cry. It was so well written, so loving, and everything I want in a sweet, sweet sequel follow-up to a romance story. Number 4, we have The Luckiest Lady in London, and yes, I'm really putting a Regency romance way at the top here. I'm not even sure this is Regency. I think this is 1870s England, so it's like Edwardian, late Victorian. I just love this book. It was just great. The banter, the animosity, the romance that crept up on you, the backstory to the characters, it's what I need in my romances. It set the standard, and it's why some of these romances are rated pretty low, because this one just swept them off all their feet. Number 3. We're getting really, these could all take like the top, they could like divide the top prize between them. But number 3, we have Foster by Claire Keegan, which is an Irish short story that made me cry. It reminded me a lot of Anne of Green Gables, but not quite. It just had a very Marilla and Matthew Ann vibe. Anyway, I loved Foster, and it is a short story, so you have no excuse. You should go read it. Number 2, In the Dream House. This is a memoir of a queer relationship that is intermixed with domestic violence. Heavy trigger warnings for the domestic violence and the scenarios that happen due to domestic violence in the relationship, but I highly recommend it if you are in a good mental health space to read it, and it is one of the best books I've read so far in 2023. Very favorite book, best book, maybe not a favorite, but the best book that I cannot get out of my head, the best book so far that I have read out of 40 books in 2023 is Radium Girls. This is a nonfiction history book about, it's really not really history, it's so gripping. You would not call it a history book if you read it. It is a nonfiction story of the girls who worked on radium dials between World War I and late 1920s and who suffered the health defects and the lawsuits and the legal fight that they had to endure in order to get their conditions known, and for the companies that put them through unsafe working conditions would accept responsibility and take ownership for the harm that was caused to these hundreds of girls who lost their lives working with radium in an unprotected manner. It is so good, but it will leave you haunted. Haunted is a good word. That is why it is the first and the best on my list, because it is something you cannot stop thinking about once you've read it. I highly, highly recommend it. And there you have it. That is the top 40 books that I've read so far this year, ranked from worst to best. Let me know if you've read any of the books on the list, if you disagree with my ranking, what you're thinking, and what books you think I should read before the end of the year. If you have any challenges like a Colleen Hoover readathon where I have to read a book a day for a week from an author like Colleen Hoover, or anything like that, let me know. If you have any questions about the books I've read, where I find book recommendations, how I recommend books, all that jazz, feel free to ask, because I would love to answer either in the comments or in a subsequent video. And thanks for watching. Don't forget to check out my Instagram. I share a lot more about the books I read over on Instagram as well as on TikTok. And thanks for 20K here on YouTube. It's so exciting to hit that many people. It's like it's like the size of the town I was born or where I grew up. That's incredible. Anyway, thanks for watching. Love to see y'all, and I will see all again later. See ya.
We're sorry. You have reached a number that has been disconnected or is no longer in service.